Hey, soul family, welcome to the channel or welcome back for the A1 Day ones. I do appreciate your patience with me. I've been away from the channel for a little bit. I was active in the live stream, but I haven't been uploading, and I'm going to remedy that over the next few days. So I do, again, thank you for your patience. But we got to get in here and finish on and complete the book of Enoch, because if you remember, once we finish the book of Enoch, we're going to be jumping right into the 12th planet, which is the first part of Zechariah Sitchin's Earth Chronicles. So I'm back in the saddle, and we're going to see what else Enoch has in store for us today. Where we left off was at chapter 90. So we're going to jump right in and see what's going on with these visions, because some of them were kind of interesting, some were kind of exciting, and to be honest, some were a little scary. But that's okay, because we're here for it. So in any event, let's get it. Chapter 90. And I saw till in this manner 35 shepherds undertook the pasturing of the sheep, and they severally completed their periods as did the first. And the others received them into their hands to pasture them for their period, each shepherd in his own period. And after that I saw in my vision all the birds of heaven coming, the eagles, the vultures, the kites, the ravens. But the eagles led all the birds, and they began to devour those sheep, and to pick out their eyes, and to devour their flesh. Oh Lord, I thought it was scary before. It's really getting up there now, but again. And the sheep cried out because their flesh was being devoured by the birds. As for me, I looked and lamented in my sleep over that shepherd who pastured the sheep. And I saw until those sheep were devoured by the dogs and eagles and kites, and they left neither flesh nor skin nor sinew remaining on them, till only their bones stood there. And their bones too fell to the earth, and the sheep became few. And I saw until that 23 had undertaken the pasturing and completed in their several periods 58 times. But behold, lambs were born by those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes and see, and to cry to the sheep. Yeah, they cried to them, but they did not hearken to what they said to them, but they were exceedingly deaf, and their eyes were very exceedingly blinded. And I saw in the vision how the ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces, and devoured them. And I saw till horns grew upon those lambs, and the ravens cast down the horns. And I saw till there sprouted a great horn of one of those sheep, and their eyes were opened. And it looked at them, and their eyes opened, and it cried to the sheep and the rams, and saw it, and all ran to it. And notwithstanding all this, those eagles and vultures and ravens and kites still kept tearing the sheep and swooping down upon them and devouring them, till the sheep remained silent, but the rams lamented and cried out. And those ravens fought and battled with it, and sought to lay low its horn, but they had no power over it. And I saw till the shepherds and eagles and those vultures and kites came, and they cried to the ravens that they should break the horn of that ram. And they battled and fought with it, and battled with them, and cried that its help might come. And I saw till that man who wrote down the names of the shepherds, and carried up into the presence of the Lord of the sheep, came and helped it, and showed it everything he had come down for the help of that ram. And I saw till the Lord of the sheep came down unto them in wrath, and all who saw him fled, and they all fell into his shadow from before his face. All the eagles and vultures and ravens and kites were gathered together, and there came with them all the sheep of the field. Yea, they came together and helped each other to break that horn of the ram. And I saw that man who wrote the book according to the command of the Lord, till he opened that book concerning the destruction which those 12 last shepherds had wrought, and showed that they had destroyed much more than their predecessors before the Lord of the sheep. And I saw till the Lord of the sheep came unto them, and took in his hand the staff of his wrath, and smote the earth, and the earth clave asunder, and all the beasts and all the birds of heaven fell from among those sheep and were swallowed up in the earth and covered them. Now, I got to stop here because as I'm reading this, something is coming to mind, and I'm not claiming to be no great Bible scholar or anything, but I'm seeing a correlation here. When we go back into, it talks about the Lord of the sheep coming into his wrath. He's coming to protect the sheep. And then the rams who were over there, they should have got along. You would have thought, because sheep and rams, but then again, even in the scriptures, Yeshua made the distinction between the sheep and the goats. And honestly, biologically, they very seem to be somewhat closely related. You would think that if the birds of prey were preying on the sheep, that the goats would have came in or the rams would have come in to defend them, but that didn't happen. But as I was reading that, I also remembered in the Lost Book of Enki, where it does declare that, or states, I don't have to declare, but it does state that sheep were an imported, they are a non-indigenous crop or species to earth. They were brought from Nibiru, and because they were compatible to the life form here, just like the Anunnaki were able to breathe our air and drink our water and eat the vegetation and stuff here without wearing helmets or whatever, they could breathe, they could survive in our atmosphere, as could the sheep. But the sheep are not indigenous to earth. And that made me wonder if that's why those who found favor in the scripture are referred to as the sheep, and then the ones who don't are referred to as goats. I mean, not only do rams and goats have a much more violent, less agreeable nature, but they've obviously been bred with something else, or they may be an entirely species entirely. I'm not into zoology or animal husbandry enough to know exactly what the deal is between goats and sheep. But like I said, the sheep were from Nibiru, as we are partially. We have the DNA from Nibiru. And plunked down in that environment, the ones that were supposed to help and protect and defend turned on them. The leader of that said that they could have mentioned one goat, a leader of that who may have been a distant cousin, just like you would think that the one who put himself in a position as the Elohim over humans would have lovingly shepherded or tended humanity, but instead was leaving them to ruin, leaving them open to prey, and allowing his minions, or the carrier birds, the eagles and the ravens and the kites, to come in and pick through and destroy what should have been a very protected crop of the sheep, until the master shepherd Yeshua comes through and said that eventually he's going to right that wrong, put that goat down, and shepherd and protect the sheep. So it just, like I said, I've got the understanding in the biblical nature of the sheep and the goats. We've been hearing that in church for years, but it's the first time that I ever ran through my mind that, wait a minute, Yeshua likens us to sheep, not only because of mild disposition, but perhaps because we are not entirely of this earth. He tells us we in this world, but not of it, because guess what? Sheep are in this world, but not of it too. They're not indigenous to this planet. They came from Nibiru. I just found that interesting, but let's carry on, shall we? Let me see. And I saw till a great sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them, and all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fled before their face. And I saw till a throne was erected in the pleasant land, and the Lord of the sheep sat himself thereupon, and the other took the sealed books and opened those books before the Lord of the sheep. Let me get to this next part. And I saw till a Wait a minute. I'm sorry. And the Lord called those men, the 7 first white ones, and commanded that they should bring before him, beginning with the first star which led the way, all the stars whose privy members were like those of horses. And they brought them all before him. And he said to that man who wrote before him, bring one of those 7 white ones. And he said unto them, take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered the sheep, and who, taking them on their own authority, slew more than I commanded them. And behold, they were all bound, and I saw, and they all stood before him. And the judgment was held first over the stars, and they were judged and found guilty, and went to the place of condemnation, and they were cast into an abyss full of fire and flaming, and full of pillars of fire. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into that fiery abyss. Now we get back to the scriptural reference on here, but again, scriptural, but not quite. You got to go back into some of what it reminds me of some things that I've read in the Anunnaki text, because it talks about the 7 first white ones. Now, the 7 who judged were a ruling class on Nibiru, but I don't think it was talking about that there, because it talks about, though, beginning with the first star which led the way, all the stars whose privy members were like those of horses, and they brought all before him. That the difference in, let's just be grown, but the difference in the genitalia of Homo sapiens sapiens was a very sore sticking point with Yahweh. That's the reason he called for circumcision of human males, because according to the Anunnaki text, Nuburian males or Atlanteans did not have a foreskin. So they were very distinguishable from human males at birth. And because of that difference, Yahweh insisted that human males at least have their foreskin removed. Like I said, they couldn't remove the entire covering, but at least that part, he did, in order to be around him and be considered his people, that had to go. But it's saying that he was telling these ones, these were the people, these were the ones that were placed in position to accurately or adequately shepherd the sheep. Remember the priest kings? When the Anunnaki stopped ruling directly, at first they established hybrid priest kings that they chose and put in power. And then once, because the Sumerian kings list is in a museum over in Oxford, England to this day, it talks about kings who ruled for thousands and thousands of years. Obviously, those kings were not completely human, because they lived, some of them ruled for 10, 15, 20,000 years. And even by the time we get down to the biblical times, the ancient priest kings were no longer ruling, but the priesthood was being directed by the Anunnaki. But even still, there was some hybrids still there, because we have the likes of Methuselah and Lamech and Kenan and all of them who were living 5, 6, 7, 900 years. Noah, I think, lived like 650 years or something like that, according to even the Christian scriptures. So we're still seeing there's some kind of an obvious hybridization over those who were still ruling over the rest of humanity, and they were supposed to do better. But instead, they aligned themselves with that first one, Yahweh, that goat, ram, who decided to go in and just rip humanity asunder. And it says here that eventually the one who actually was going to sit and rule over the sheep, that there was judgment. Okay, it says they were all bound, I saw, and they all stood before him. Speaking of the man, wait a minute. He said to that man who wrote before him, being one of those 7 white ones, so he's like them, but not like them. He said unto them, take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered the sheep, and who, taking them on their own authority, slew more than I commanded them. So there was an acceptable loss that was allowed for a time, but now somebody who's like them but has a different frame of mind is coming in and saying, you did not follow my commands, you done went all the way left on this, and now you're gonna have to reckon for this. And behold, they were all bound, I saw, and they all stood before him. And the judgment was held first over the stars, and they were judged and found guilty. The stars, of course, I'm sure being the watchers, they were considered angels, angels, beings of light, however you want to look at it. And they went into the place of condemnation. And remember when Uriel showed Enoch everything before, he showed him a realm that was specially put aside for those who had misled and wreaked havoc on earth and brought black magic and all these other things that they were doing. This led humanity lost. It says they went to the place of condemnation. They were cast into an abyss full of fire and flaming and full of pillars of fire, just kind of sort of like they describe in Revelation chapter 20. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into that fiery abyss. And you can't feel sorry for them because they might be hybrid humans, but they also hybrid Anunnaki. And they had a close enough dealing with the Anunnaki that they were supposed to know better. They deliberately, intentionally, for greed and power, chose to lead the sheep lost for hundreds and thousands of years. And I saw at that time how a like abyss was opened in the midst of the earth, full of fire, and they brought those blinded sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty and cast into this fiery abyss, and they burned. Now this abyss was to the right of that house. So, and this is exactly what I talked about in one of the live streams the other day. The religion has got people afraid of a burning hell that's going to last forever, but there is not one scripture that indicates that a burning, torturous hell, a forever hell, is designed for humans. It does not say that. The fiery abyss that carries out the torture forever and ever was for those Anunnaki beings, the watchers, the leaders, Satan, the devil, that dragon, the manslayer, the murderer. That's what the scriptures call him. I didn't say that. And you have to go into the Anunnaki text to understand that Satan, the devil, is Yahweh. They said his title was Satan of the Eden. But at the end of the day, the scriptures refer to him as that dragon, the manslayer, the da-da-da-da-da. And it says that he is the one that's going to be put into that fiery pit and the watchers along with him. But the humans, those sheep that were blinded by them, apparently they're beyond redemption too, because they willfully participated in this. They had a choice. They could awaken their consciousness and chose to do differently. And for those who don't think that they should be held accountable, if you'll remember, like I said, even Eve, all the way back to the beginning, once she heard the truth, she was able to discern the difference, and she turned off her worship gene and did not follow the route of Yahweh. The nation of Israel, for a time, Abraham aligned the nation of Israel, his offspring. He aligned his offspring with Yahweh. And then Moses turned around and re-dipped them back into following Yahweh. Those people followed Abraham and Moses because that was their ancestor, and out of respect or whatever, they chose to listen to those men. But as a collective whole, everybody in the nation of Israel didn't buy that Yahweh nonsense, because a couple of times, at least twice in the Bible, it talks about how the nation of Israel stopped worshiping Yahweh. He was so violent and bloodthirsty and did not keep his promises to them. They went back to worshiping Asherah. Now, the scribes, the so-called biblical Yahweh scribes, are the ones that composed the text that they chose to use to put this story together. So those men who actually was also hoodwinked, bamboozled, or made a direct choice, however you want to see it, but they chose to put more store in the choices of their ancestors, Abraham and Moses, than they did in looking with their eyes of discernment to understand that Abraham and Moses had chosen to worship an evil being. And as a result, they're going to wind up, because they chose that choice, even though Yeshua came amongst them and tried to teach them something better, they rejected his words so thoroughly that they called for his death and actually orchestrated it. The emperor at the time, it talks about in the scriptures when he was brought before the emperor, he didn't want to execute Yeshua. He said, I can find no fault in this man. He questioned him along the same line. Well, you say you are God and you say you this, trying to catch him up with by word to be able to justify executing him. And at the end of his interrogation of Yeshua, he said, I can find no fault in this man. We have a tradition of allowing one of the convicts to be released back to the people during this time of Sabbath. I think they were coming up on an actual high Sabbath as well, not just a weekly Sabbath. But in any event, he was going to release Yeshua, and the Jews said no. They would rather them have the thief or the murderer released back to them than Yeshua. That's how bad they wanted him gone. And for that, don't you think they kind of sort of deserve some punishment? So these scriptures say that the ones, they were blinded sheep, but they chose willful ignorance. So they brought the blinded sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty and cast into the fiery abyss, and they burned. They weren't tortured forever and ever. They were just simply unalived. Now, this abyss was to the right of that house. It was not the same abyss or fiery abyss that the leaders were sent to. The blinded sheep that could not be awakened, could not be brought back to see, they had been too damaged by those choices and by that incorrect leadership. They would just be done away with. They're not tortured forever. And I saw those sheep burning and their bones burning, and I stood up to see till they folded up that old house and carried off all the pillars, and all the beams and the ornaments of the house were at the same time folded up with it, and they carried it off and laid it in a place in the south of the land. And I saw till the Lord of the sheep brought a new house greater, and I loftier, oh, greater and loftier, excuse me, he was a typo, they put a space in there. I brought a new house greater and loftier than that first, and set it up in the place of the first, which had been folded up. All its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new and larger than those of the first, and the old one which he had taken away, and all the sheep were within it. And at the end of Revelation, don't Yeshua say that his Elohim, after Yeshua and Michael and the four horsemen and all of it, Gabriel is in on it too. After all of that goes down, and all of the ones who lined up with Satan, the devil, are destroyed, it says that his Elohim would be descending with a new Jerusalem, and as it came down to earth, that he was going to be the new Elohim, the new kid on the block, new sheriff in town, so to speak, and that he was going to rule in peace over humanity. And basically, this is the same thing. It's saying he's that the old house was torn down, the old folks that was running the show was gotten rid of. The damaged souls that just could not understand the new way of being, the ones that chose to align with that, they are executed. And after all of that set aside, the Lord of the sheep brought a new house greater and loftier than that first one, and set it up in the place of the first, which had been folded up. All its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new and larger than those of the first, the old one which he had taken away, and all the sheep were within it. And I saw all the sheep which had been left, and all the beasts on the earth, and all the heavens of, and all the birds of heaven, falling down and doing homage to those sheep, and making petition to and obeying them in everything. So even those that was kind of sort of on the fence, if they were deemed not too tainted, that they weren't really with the initial sheep, but they really wasn't all the way over there just completely incorrigible, they got an opportunity to see what was going on. And lo and behold, when they realize what's going on, when the new sheriff in town establishes himself and sits down and gets this thing right, it says that they literally pay honor to that one, and they obviously they gonna rock with the new program. Who wouldn't? We had one here that's been bringing hell and confusion all this time and damaging folks, and you telling me somebody now is going to come and basically do a hard reset, but we're going to move in a different direction with peace and prosperity and kind treatment and all of that, completely 180 degrees opposite of what the last sheriff in town had to put forth. Of course they're going to give that a shot. Why not? And thereafter, those three who were clothed in white and had seized me by my hand, who had taken me up before, and the hand of that ram also seizing hold of me, they took me up and set me down in the midst of those sheep before the judgment took place. And those sheep were all white, and their wool was abundant and clean. And all that had been destroyed and dispersed, and all the beasts of the field, and all the birds of the heaven assembled in that house. And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced with great joy, because they were all good and had returned to his house. And I saw till they laid down that sword which had been given to the sheep, and they brought it back into the house, and it was sealed before the presence of the Lord, and all the sheep were invited into that house, but it held them not. So it was so many, they wouldn't even all fit in the house. Like the great multitude it talks about in Revelation that bowed down before the throne in the face of the new Elohim. And the eyes of them all were opened, and they saw the good, and there was not one among them that did not see. And I saw that that house was large and broad and very full. And you know what? The thing that interests me, I had this conversation with my son about a week or so ago, because he was, again, I'm not saying that it's faulty logic, but when you are so jaded and used to looking at the things that things are, and he's a military man, so of course he's got military type logic. He's saying that basically there will always be a dissenting factor. Who's to say what's good or bad? There is no good or bad. So no matter what happened, we're going to always have this evil on the earth. Well, not necessarily. If we got a new sheriff in town that to put down some hardcore, easy to understand rules, then it's not necessarily evil if the bad actors are swiftly dealt with and not allowed to get out of hand and control and run the earth and run amok again. People think that when the scriptures talk about peace and prosperity and all the rest of that kumbaya, well, the Bible says thou shalt not kill. Well, that's the biggest bunch of hypocrisy they ever put in that book, because the Christians and Yahweh and the Jews and everything else all through that book was steady killing left, right, and sideways. It told the parishioners thou shalt not kill. But by the same turn, it does say that for all the sweetness, love, and light, again, people get it twisted, because the scriptures done painted Yeshua as a milk toast, and oh, they show him so broken and raggedy hanging on the cross like he just wouldn't hurt a fly. They forget that the thing that led to him getting hung on that so-called cross in the first place was because he sat down in a fit of righteous anger and braided a whip and ran the money changers out of the temple and said, you turned the Father's house into a den of thieves. And he was literally horsewhipping those people up out the temple. He's not a milk toast. He don't advocate violence, but when it come push to shove, he gonna do what gots to be done. And according to Revelation, he, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, the four horsemen, Phanuel, and all the rest of them are going to come through and clean house. They're not going to sit and pray with them and bless you, my child, and all the rest of that. Time for that is over. By the time they come through the clean house, they cleaning house all the way. And they said that a third of the population of the planet will be dealt with, gone. You can get mad, but you can't say you wasn't warned. Because he went 2,000 years ago and tried to warn people, and they unalived him for it. He said, don't worry, I'll be back. And when I come, I'm bringing my galactic friends with me. I will not leave y'all as orphans. I will come back. I'll send Holy Spirit as a helper. And he did that. And hundreds of people, thousands of people on the planet got the message and been trying to tell people for the last 100 years. And they continue to ignore the message or misinterpret it or get mad or want to, all of that. But when the time comes, nobody will be able to say, especially since we're now living in the information age when over half the population has access to this information right in their back pocket by way of phones. By the time this all rolls out, nobody will be able to say they never heard of this. They didn't know. They just chose not to believe. So you really can't even feel sorry for them at that point. You don't want nothing bad to happen to them, but again, each tub rests on its own bottom. If that's what they chose for themselves, it's what they chose, right? And people want to say I sound harsh for saying that. But ain't that what Christians tell you every day when you don't believe what they believe? First they say they're going to pray for you, and then they tell you you're going to die and go to hell if you don't see things like they do. Muslims kind of sort of do the same thing, because if you don't believe like they believe, not only will they not mess with you, but if things really get tough, they don't mind taking you out with a quickness. And you can turn on the TV right about these days and see what the Jews is doing, right? So they can't really say that I'm being unkind for saying there will come a point in time when Yeshua will act as an enforcer. And if he got to take some folks out, that's what he going to do. If we don't celebrate that, we try to share what we've learned so that people can open their minds and their consciousness, because we don't know when that time is going to come, what generation is going to be alive on the planet when those decisions are being made. But we do know that we do keep coming back here. So even if it doesn't happen in our lifetimes, the more of this information we can put out there begins to help people continue awakening and learning and growing. So at whatever point that time comes, folks will have knowledge of it. We can't continue to allow the lies to perpetuate. That's all. And I saw that a white bull was born with large horns, and all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the air feared him and made petition to him all the time. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that was good. And I saw till all their generations were transformed. And I saw till all their generations were transformed, and they all became white bulls. And the first among them became a lamb. And that lamb became a great animal and had great black horns on its head. And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over it and over all the oxen. And I slept in their midst, and I awoke and saw everything. This is the vision which I saw while I slept, and I awoke and blessed the Lord of righteousness and gave him glory. Then I wept with a great weeping, and my tears stayed not till I could no longer endure it. When I saw, they flowed on account of what I had seen, for everything shall come and be fulfilled, and all the deeds of men in their order were shown to me. On that night I remembered the first dream, and because of it I wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. And now we're in chapter 91. And now my son Methuselah called to me all thy brothers, and gather together to me all the sons of thy mother. For the word calls me, and the Spirit is poured out upon me, that I may show you everything that shall befall you forever. And thereupon Methuselah went and summoned to him all his brothers, and assembled his relatives. And this, we've already talked about the fact that Enoch Enoch had to have been a hybrid. That's the main reason I think that Enki made the decision to take him up and show him the secrets of heaven, and he became the scribe of Enki and all of that. But even in the Lost Book, when it talks about Andupsar, the scribe, the one who wrote the Lost Book, was a grandson of Enoch, I think. So or son of Enoch. Basically, it was his grandson. It was Enki's grandson. So all of these hybrids in the scriptures, like I said, go back and look at Genesis chapter 5. Now, I can't speak for all of the lineages that was listed in Genesis, but in chapter 5, it's very special, because almost all of the names that are listed in Genesis chapter 5 also show up in the Lost Book of Enki. That would indicate that those were biological children or grandchildren, some kind of way biologically related to Lord Enki. They were hybrids. And the fact that they all lived over 500 years is kind of proof positive of that. Like Methuselah lived 969 years according to the Bible. And like you said, Enoch, his lifespan was relatively short because he was taken up at like 360 years. Now, I believe later on in this book, he gets brought back down. But if he did ever come back to earth, by the time he came back, even if he was only in Nibiru for one shar, a shar is 3,600 of Earth years. So by the time he came back to Earth, anybody that had known him as Enoch would have been long gone off of this earth. Time is different out there. All right. So now Methuselah went and summoned to him all his brothers and assembled his relatives. And because remember, Uriel, or was it Phanuel at this point, whichever one of them was showing him around, told him, we're going to bring you back and you'll have a year, I think it was, either a year or 2 years to get your affairs in order, teach your sons and all of them the things that they need to know, and then we're going to come back and pick you up and you're going to be transfigured off of this planet, period. So he had to gather everybody and teach them the things that he had been shown in vision so they would understand. Verse 3. And he spake unto all the children of righteousness and said, hear ye, sons of Enoch, all the words of your father, and hearken aright to the voice of my mouth. For I exhort you and say unto you, beloved, love uprightness and walk therein. And draw not nigh up to uprightness with a double heart, and associate not with those of a double heart, but walk in righteousness, my sons, and it shall guide you on good paths, and righteousness shall be your companion. And this is where they really do us a grave disservice in the scriptures, because we hear mention of Enoch, and here's the thing. It's something I'm just now realizing now. It does say in the scriptures that Enoch walked with the true Elohim. And we misinterpret that because Christians make you misinterpret it to believe that Enoch was a follower of Yahweh. But this is very clear in the book of Enoch that he was not. That's the main reason the book of Enoch was taken out of the scriptures. Enoch was not Team Yahweh. He could not possibly have been Team Yahweh. If you recall, Yahweh Enlil absolutely hates humanity. Wanted no parts of us, did not participate in the Adamo breeding project, genuinely tried to have us completely eradicated from the earth in the flood. He demanded that we not be told that the flood was coming, that we all be allowed to be drowned like rats. He was angry when he found out that some of us survived the flood due to Lord Enki having obeyed the messenger Galzu's vision and having told Noah, Ziazudra, how to build the dimensions and what to do to be able to survive the flood, and helping to get the genetic samples and all of those things. That's in the lost book. He tells you it wasn't all of it. They didn't put just only those animals in there. They put genetic essences on in that vessel. I'm not even going to call it an ark because it does not describe a boat. In the Anunnaki text, it describes a floating disc. But in any event, the fact that we're still here is no thanks to Lord Enlil. He's been trying to get rid of us ever since Lord Enki made us. Okay? So there's no way, as much as he hated humans, that he would have agreed to elevate a human or even a half human into the lofty position of scribe and allow him to be ascended into the heavens and reach immortality and all of those things that Enoch and Elijah were able to manage. It doesn't even make sense. So when the scriptures say Enoch walked with the true God, they're telling you there's another Elohim in there. Yahweh put himself forth. And the scriptures tell us that Satan, the devil, disguises himself as an angel of light, that he has deceived the whole world, that the whole world lies in the power of the wicked one. It's through that book several times over and over. But humanity, because Christianity genericized, like I said, they scrubbed all the names of the Elohim from those texts and mistranslated Elohim to mean God in the singular. Then we don't realize when we're hearing these or reading these stories in the Bible that they're actually telling us in plain words who was on which team and whatnot. Job, unfortunately, And honestly, come to think of it, I believe in a way that Job might have been on team Enki as well. Enki said Job, and again, I don't agree with what happened to Job. That makes me angry when I think about it. But the one who questioned Job's loyalty was Yahweh. He said, of course he serves you. You give him everything. And the Elohim said, all right, you want to test his loyalty? You can do whatever you want to him. Just don't kill him. And then Yahweh stripped that man of everything. He stripped him down to the frame, like a car stripped down on bricks. Took his family, took his livestock, his money, all his children, his friends, and smote him with a horrible disease, so that he literally had pussy oozing sores all over his body. And then his so-called friends swooped down on him like magpies to taunt him for 2 weeks straight. You must have deserved this. You were so hot. Where's your blessings now, Job? I guess you thought you was hot. Now, Job, look at you now. All of that kind of stuff. So it's very likely that even Job was on team Enki, and Yahweh hated that. So we know good and full well there ain't no way that he would have granted humans the kind of favor that Enoch and Elijah received by being allowed to ascend to become angels. Would not have happened. Let me go back here. I'm sorry. I had to start to get on that tangent, but these things be occurring to me. So I'm going to read this part again so we can continue forward. He spake unto all the children of righteousness and said, hear ye, O sons of Enoch, all the words of your father, and hearken aright to the voice of my mouth. For I exhort you and say unto you, beloved, love uprightness and walk therein, and draw not nigh to the uprightness with a double heart, and associate not with those of a double heart, but walk in righteousness, my son, and it shall guide you on good paths, and righteousness shall be your companion. And the ones who worship Yahweh had to have had a double heart, because they did not like the things that was happening. Like I said, they ventured away from serving Yahweh a couple times, but they was in fear. They continued to walk along with him too, even though some of them later on will still put up their Asherah poles and all of that. They said the most common sacred artifact of that time period was not nothing indicating service to Yahweh. It was something, like I said, Asherah images were all over the place. The archaeologists still finding them to this day. For I know that violence must increase on the earth, and a great chastisement be executed on the earth, and all unrighteousness come to an end. Yea, it shall be cut off from its roots, and its whole structure be destroyed. And unrighteousness shall again be consummated on the earth, and all the deeds of unrighteousness and of violence and transgression shall prevail in a twofold degree. So he's saying, I do understand that the way this thing plays out. And again, people ask, why would God allow this to continue? Why didn't he just come in and do this? Well, above and beyond all else, we have to remember that Enki was trying to advocate for peace and a different way of being, even on his home planet. He saw that their ways was not good. But Enki was not given rulership of earth. Anu gave it to Yahweh. So if Enki had just decided to thump his chest and go in and slay his own brother, according to Nibiru rules, we would have been lost for real, because with a swiftness, Anu would have, under Nibiru guidelines, because yes, they both his sons, but right is right and wrong is wrong. Look what they did to Alalu when he challenged the throne and then behaved against their rules when he lost. He was exiled, but he couldn't deal with that, so he turned around and physically harmed Anu and was exiled to Mars. If Enki had came in and killed his own brother over the way Yahweh was mismanaging earth, he would have been executed or exiled to the farthest ends of the planet at the very worst, or at the very least, I mean. And what good would he have been to us then? So people really need to have a little more understanding for what was actually happening. It's not a matter of actual gods. These were brothers with birthrights on the line, and very powerful. A very powerful father looking at this from a distance, yes, but still alive and well to this day, still looking at it. So Enki did not have the carte blanche to just go in and stop Yahweh from doing the things that he was doing. He knew that this was going to have to play out a certain way, and over time Yahweh's way was going to wreak so much havoc on the earth that something would have to be done. And over time, through their courts and their systems and all of that, according to the book of Revelation, he has been tried and judged. He was exiled once before. Even before it got down to the biblical time we're talking about in Revelation, Marduk was exiled for his evil acts against humanity, and Yahweh was exiled at one point too. But eventually they were allowed to come out of exile because of Anu's soft heart. But in the scriptures, it says that eventually Yahweh was exiled again for 1,000 years, and then he was let loose for a short time. Well, 500 years or so, or even 1,000 years, is a very short time by Nibiru, by Anunnaki standards. And we talked about that before. Again, I'm not an expert, but if we look historically at how quiet the earth was religiously and politically from about 6, 7, 800 AD or so up until the Renaissance period around 1500 or so, that's about 1,000 years, and everything was pretty quiet and rocking on. We wasn't hearing a lot going on philosophically, religiously, politically, none of that. Wasn't a whole lot of wars on the planet, none of that. It was considered the Dark Ages. Then we come along with the Renaissance, and yes, art and philosophy and all of those things ramped up again too, but so did politics and violence on the planet, which would indicate exactly what the scriptures talk about, how he would be released onto the earth to do his works for a time. And then at some point down the line, and it looks like we might be getting close to it, because Yeshua said, go to the gate. The water bearer will show you, the man with the water jug will show the way. We're at the gateway of Aquarius. We don't know exactly if that's going to be when, but it seemed like it might be a good time for some stuff to happen, because everything in Revelation has already been fulfilled except that last showdown. But it does say that at some point in the near future, well, I say near because, like I said, everything else, we are literally living in Revelation 19 at the most, at the worst, 20 at best. Everything else is already, it's coming to pass and done come to pass. So the book is about played out according to the prophecies that they laid down in the dream that Yeshua gave to John. It says, unrighteousness shall again be consummated on the earth, and all the deeds of the unrighteousness and of violence and transgression shall prevail in a twofold degree. So they knew it was going to get worse than it ever had been before. Twice as bad as it's ever been before. Is that not what we're living in right now? Like, seriously. You know, the attitude of people, the violence, the random craziness. I mean, people just act like they done lost their ever-loving mind. Some people, I'm not saying everybody on earth is like that, but all you got to do is turn on your television, turn on YouTube, Facebook, any of the outlets, and you're going to see somebody crashing out. They even call it crashing out now, acting a damn fool, like they done lost their minds. For what? For nothing, because that's the spirit that's prevalent right now, like they said that it would be. And when sin and unrighteousness and blasphemy and violence and all kinds of deeds increase, and apostasy and transgression and uncleanness increase, a great chastisement shall come from heaven upon all these, and the holy Lord will come forth with wrath and chastisement to execute judgment on earth. In those days, violence shall be cut off from its roots, and the roots of unrighteousness together with deceit, and they shall be destroyed from under heaven. That's pretty clear. They can get mad as they want to about it, but that's pretty clear. He's saying that idea that evil will always prevail on earth, no, it ain't. They don't been allowed to rock out and try to show that their way is the way, but they done had thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We done had a couple of different resets. Lemuria was destroyed, Atlantis was destroyed, the Anunnaki wars were allowed to happen. We done been through all of this stuff, and they have proven that their way does not work. And now Lord Enki is saying it's time to put a stop to this. I done told y'all this mess don't work. Yahweh done been allowed to just have his hand and do whatever he want to do. It's gotta stop, y'all. And I'm sending my boy Yeshua, aka, in my opinion, Thoth, in here as the cleanup crew. Hold on a second. Let me get to where we need to be. And when sin, wait a minute. Nope, I did that part. And all the idols of the heathen shall be abandoned, and the temples burned with fire, and they shall remove them from the whole earth. And they, wait a minute, I went too far. Oh. And they, i.e., the heathen, shall be cast into the judgment of fire, and shall perish in wrath and in grievous judgment forever. And the righteous shall arise from their sleep, and the wisdom shall arise and be given unto them. Oh, sound like a great awakening. And folks are waking up to the truth and deciding no longer to buy into the lie. It says the righteous. Wait a minute. Let me go back and read that one more time because it's too juicy and good not to. All the idols of the heathen shall be abandoned. Now, again, Christians, Muslims, Jews, all the Abrahamic religions are quick to talk about idolatry and label everything else as heathen. But remember, we talked about when you got a finger pointing, how many pointing back at you? They don't even realize that they have been bowing to the false light. They keep hollering about false light, false light. Yeshua told them they was worshiping the devil. They didn't want to believe it. So who is actually the idols? Who's actually the heathens? Who actually got all the semblances of their worship with all their crosses and their symbols and they all of that stuff that they do? But it says the temples will be burned with fire. They shall remove them from the whole earth, and they shall be cast into the judgment of fire, and shall perish in wrath and in grievous judgment forever. And the righteous shall arise from their sleep, and wisdom shall arise and be given unto them. And Yeshua said that the meek would inherit the earth, and they will reside forever upon it. It ain't had nothing to do with what church you belong to, what synagogue you belong to, what masjid you belong to. It has something to do with what was going on here and here. That you were able to see past the illusion and move into truth. And after that, the roots of unrighteousness shall be cut off, and the sinners shall be destroyed by the sword, shall be cut off from the blasphemers in every place, and those who plan violence and those who commit blasphemy shall perish by the sword. And after that there shall be another, the 8th week, that of righteousness, and a sword shall be given to it, that a righteous judgment may be executed on the oppressors, and sinners shall be delivered into the hands of the righteous. Now, it's interesting to me because, again, by religion standard, by the Abrahamic religion standards, I'm blasphemous. Because why? Because I'm telling what Yeshua actually said. I looked at that book and saw it don't say what y'all say it say. You writing a whole lot of extra stuff in it that ain't what he said. And then I went and looked at some other books and went, oh, well, if this over here is true and it appears to be linked to this over here in this book, that whatever, and this is what Yeshua said, and it ties into this and it ties into this and connecting the dots. Now I understand what Yeshua was really talking about. So who's really on the blasphemy time? The blasphemy is in declaring or giving credit to Yahweh that should have been given to Enki. The blasphemy is choosing to bow down and worship the devil when Yeshua had already told them he's the devil and told them to stop doing it. The blasphemy was in actually unaliving Yeshua for trying to tell them the truth and then continuing to rock out and then put a binding spell and a curse on him and rocked out and laced him in the middle of their lies to promote them lies to the rest of the world and continuing to feed off of humans and keep them mentally enslaved by means of religion for over 2,000 years. That's the real blasphemy, if you ask me. And according to this book, I think it's blasphemy to them too, because Enki didn't require our worship. People think that blasphemy is just speaking out against the Elohim. No, it ain't. It's sitting there basically lying on the Elohim is what blasphemy really is, and being super disrespectful. And it is disrespectful because if I come out somewhere and speak publicly about Lord Enki, they're going to tell me I'm wrong and I'm going to hell because Yahweh said. I have it happen to me all the time in the live streams and everything else. They will only acknowledge the one most bloodthirsty, violent, hateful Elohim that ever walked this planet and completely ignore all the rest of them. They declared everything else pagan or heathen or mythos. They literally, the Abrahamic religions in the past 2,500 years has disavowed all knowledge of our history, our origin, our everything. They disavowed all knowledge of all the other Elohim so that they could give all glory to Yahweh. That is blasphemy. And after that, there shall be another, the 8th week, that of righteousness. And a sword shall be given to it, that a righteous judgment may be executed on the oppressors, and sinners shall be delivered into the hands of the righteous. And at its close they shall acquire houses through their righteousness, and a house shall be built for the great king in glory forevermore. And all mankind shall look to the path of uprightness, and after that, in the 9th week, the righteous judgment shall be revealed to the whole world, and all the works of the godless shall vanish from the earth, and the world shall be written down for destruction. Now it says, at its close they shall acquire houses through their righteousness, and a house shall be built for the great king in glory forevermore. Don't that sound like that wealth transfer thing that they've been talking about in the Sarah, Jacera, all of that good stuff that they literally been talking about for over a decade now? They know it's coming and still rocking out with the evil crap that they do, still waging war, still jacking up the prices to heaven and back so decent people can barely afford to live, eat, or anything else. Even in the so-called industrialized country, so-called greatest country on the planet, hundreds of thousands of people living in the street, and some of them are being underfed, being unalive from malnutrition and everything else, right here in the good old Make America Great Again. And this book says that mess gonna end. Now we don't know when. It ain't for us to decide, but I'm just reading the book. If they want to believe in all the other Bible prophecy, you might want to dust this one off and check it out too, because it kind of give you a little more insight than them other ones do. As long when you stop putting the Christian spin on it and actually read these for what they say, in light of what all them other books say too, it look a little different. And after this, in the 10th week, in the 7th part, there shall be the great and eternal judgment, in which he will execute vengeance amongst the angels. And the first heaven shall depart and pass away, and new heaven shall appear, and all the powers of the heavens shall give sevenfold light. And after that, there will be many weeks without number forever, and all shall be in goodness and righteousness, and sin shall no more be mentioned forever. Now, the 10th week, the 7th part, ain't but 7 days in a week. So that's kind of like saying the 11th hour, right? But it says that there will be a great and eternal judgment in which he will execute vengeance amongst the angels. Don't that sound like the end of Revelation again? Let's look at it one more time over here. Or I ain't going to say one more time but in Revelation chapter 20, let's go back to, well, I'm going to have to look at the whole thing here in order to be fair. The light done shifted. Hold on, y'all. I got to get a little more reading light here. Bear with me a second here. Bear with me just a little sec. There we go. All right. Revelation 20. Then I saw an angel coming down, and this is the English Standard Version, if you're interested. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit and shut it and sealed it over him so that he might not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be released for a little while. And remember, Satan, the devil, is Yahweh, according to Yeshua in John chapter 8. And let me go back so we don't get it twisted. I don't want nobody to take my word for it. I'm on John chapter 8, verse 42. Yeshua said to them, if Elohim were your father, you would love me, for I came from Elohim, and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. You are of your father the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. Okay. All right. Now, because he done already established that he's the liar, the father of the lie, he is the devil. So, chapter 20 in Revelation, he said that he's gonna be thrown into a pit and shut it and sealed over him, so he might not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be released for a little while. And again, we talked about when that might have happened historically. If you look back on the timeline, it looks like it could have already have happened, so that the releasing point is upon us now and has been for the last 500 years or so. It looks kind of sort of like. Then I saw thrones, and seated on them were those to whom authority to judge was committed. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Yeshua and for the word of the Elohim, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their foreheads. They came to life and reigned with Yeshua for 1,000 years. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he who shares in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. Now, whether that's a physical resurrection or a resurrection or a rebranding, a re-understanding, a restanding, or coming to life of knowledge and information as it comes onto this planet, we have yet to see. But it does seem like there is they talk about a great awakening. Could that not be the resurrection that they're talking about? This resurgence of knowledge and information, this reinsertion of truth upon the planet, this setting of things straight, this tearing down of Yahweh's temple, basically. Yahweh tried to tear down everybody else's temple, but they're saying after he was bound and released back on the earth, that his temple is going to be torn down. That truth will be allowed to be prevailed, and people will be able to understand and make a real choice. And it talks about a great crowd. Well, yeah, we're going to get there. When the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle, and their number is like the sand of the sea. 8 billion sound kind of like the numbers of the sand of the sea to me. I'm just saying, but to our knowledge, under no reset or any other point in history has the population of the earth been as high as it is now. Like before, when they had all this stuff going on, it might have been 100 million people on the whole planet. Now it's 8 billion people on this planet. And he's deceived like 75% of them. It said he'll come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea, and they marched up over the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And again, don't feel sorry for them, because Yahweh had fire come down and consumed Aaron's sons for daring to try to clear the stench of all of the bloodletting that they had done in the temple of Yahweh. They unalived, they sacrificed 6 animals in one day to appease Yahweh, and he was so pleased by that. Go back and read. I think it was in first and second Kings. We were reading that, and they was in there just slapping the blood, splashing the blood of those animals. They sacrificed animals and drained them of their blood, as is the Jewish custom, because they don't eat the blood. They left that for their God Yahweh. It's supposed to be poured out to him. He's the one that likes the blood. But in this particular account in the scriptures, they not only bled those animals after they sacrificed them, they literally took the blood and was splashing it on the altar and rubbing it on the horns of the altar. And they took the fatty parts and laid it across the shoulders of the altar and laid the liver on the image, the statue that was on the altar. And Yahweh came down and consumed all of that. And Aaron's 2 sons came through with incense to clear the air. And because Yahweh didn't tell them specifically to do that, he liked the smell of that blood and all that mess, I guess. He turned around and consumed them. He literally, well, he didn't consume them all the way. They were able to carry their bodies out of the temple, but he unalived those men right in front of their daddy. And Moses told them, don't forget, don't even show grief. Don't act like you upset about what happened here, or he'll do to you the same way. Aaron couldn't even grieve the fact that this so-called deity just slayed his 2 sons right in front of him for trying to clear that nasty, stinky, bloody stench. Anybody ever been in a slaughter knows even the warm, wet blood of one animal will have even an open space smelling foul. Can you imagine having unalived 6 large animals in a confined space in the temple and in there throwing around all that blood? Of course they wanted to clear the air, and Yahweh killed them for it. So don't feel sorry for him whenever whatever happens, when fire come down and consume him, or the ones who rock with them. Because that, again, right now we're seeing all of Gog and Magog. It talks about those who were deceived by, or said he will be come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle, because they ain't got no intention of surrendering to righteousness. They gonna go headlong, butt strong, team Yahweh down to the oomph. And ain't they showing you that? Go and look in these live streams and see all these Jesus freaks and zealots that is running around, and all of the Muslim zealots and the Jewish zealots and all the black Israelites. They just know they all so Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Okay. It says that they're gathering for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea. They marched up over the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city, but fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. So the people, just like Enoch said in this book, the sheep that were led astray, the blinded sheep, would be destroyed. They will be consumed by fire. The ones who did the blinding into this misleading, the ones who were supposed to know better, they will be thrown into a fiery abyss and tormented forever and ever. Not humans. Get that out your mind. Humans have, none of these books say that humans are going to be destroyed forever. So that concept of a fiery hell is a deliberate misinterpretation of scripture designed to keep people in fear. That's the main reason people will not open their eyes to the truth, because they're so afraid if they get it wrong, they will be burnt in hell forever. That is not what the scriptures say. But let's continue. Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. From his presence, the earth and sky fled away, and no place was found for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Then another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to what they had done. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them. And they were judged, each one of them according to what they had done. And again, death and hell, according in the King James, it says death and hell, not Hades. Hades refers to the valley of Hinnom, which was a garbage dump outside of the city. But again, how you gonna destroy death or Hades in the lake of fire? If but so there's some symbology there. However, according to Enoch, there are realms that we don't understand that these non-corporeal beings will be punished in. And then it says that death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And that's why they were talking about the first resurrection is cool. But if you reach to the second death, you just done. And did you notice even the humans who were destroyed? It didn't say that they had reached their second death. They were just destroyed. This lake of fire scenario is only reserved for Yahweh and his non-corporeal minions, his angels, his demons, his minions, not the humans who were deceived by him, but the big dogs that should have known better. If anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. Now it talks about the ones in the book of life were judged according to what had been done. So there may be some need from remediation, some re-educating there. And if they refuse to be remediated, then they will be destroyed, just like the others who deceived. But the humans that were in the book of life, none of them go into this lake of fire thing. It's the ones who were not in the book of life. Yahweh, the watchers, the angels who rocked with Yahweh, all, like I said, not humans. And then after that, it talks about, we're going back to the book of Enoch. It says, after this, in the 10th week, in the 7th part, there shall be the great eternal judgment in which he will execute vengeance amongst the angels. And the first heaven shall depart and pass away, and a new heaven shall appear, and all the powers of the heavens shall give sevenfold light. And after that, there will be many weeks without number forever, and all shall be in goodness and righteousness, and sin shall no more be mentioned forever. Now I'm going to go back over here to the scriptures, to Revelation chapter 3, because Yeshua gives us some very telling information about what he finna do with his Elohim and all of those good things. Revelation 3:12. The one who conquers, I shall make him a pillar in the temple of my Elohim. Never shall he go out of it, and I will write on him the name of my Elohim and the name of the city of my Elohim, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from my Elohim out of heaven, and my own new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And then we go to Revelation 21, verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from the Elohim, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of the Elohim is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and Elohim himself will be with them as their Elohim. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, behold, I am making all things new. Also he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have his heritage, and I will be his Elohim, and he will be my son. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for the murderers, the sexually immoral, the sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, Their portion will be in that lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And again, he's referring to who would be the liars and the murderers and all of that. He ain't talking about humans. He's talking about the ones that deceive the humans, because they literally set a death sentence for those people by deliberately bringing them things that was above their understanding, that were not agreed upon. And as far as that new name in Revelation 22:16, I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Revelation 21 goes on to describe like New Jerusalem and the things that are happening and all of that. But it just, Yahweh kept calling himself the Alpha and the Omega, but again, he ain't really did nothing of any real benefit to anyone. He was doing a lot of self-aggrandizing, blowharding, like I said, evil genius, evil villain monologuing throughout a lot of the scriptures in Amos, Obadiah, and Job, all like I said, Deuteronomy, all of those. He did a whole lot of self-aggrandizement and never actually fulfilled any of it. After he's done away with, Revelation says that the other Elohim is going to come down and say, no, y'all had it twisted. I'm really the one who actually cares for you. I'm not going to hold this to you. I'm not going to keep y'all as slaves and all of this other stuff. The promises that he gave and never fulfilled, I'm here and I'm telling you now, there's a new sheriff in town and we're going to do it my way now. And I am going to fulfill those promises for you. I will not charge you for the peace. And I'm not going to allow these folks to keep coming through here and deceiving and tormenting you. We're going to have peace. We're going to have a good time. I'm going to treat you just like family, because you are my family. Yahweh never saw us as family. He said, I'll be their Elohim and they will be like my son. Yahweh never saw us as human, much less family. Lord Enki sees us as family because we are his family. Our bloodline directly has his DNA in it. When Greg Braden and all of them turned around, they did that genome sequencing, and they say that right here in our human genome, I forgot exactly what it says, but it's basically, if they decoded it according to whatever they did, it says something about having been fashioned by the Elohim. That message is coded in our DNA. That's Lord Enki. Yahweh ain't even have the juice to know how to do that. He was a warrior. He wasn't interested in medicine and philosophy and science and all those things. Lord Enki studied under the grand scientists and physicians and philosophers and all of that back on Nibiru, because he knew he was never going to ascend to the throne. He didn't have to become a military tactician. He studied for many shars under the wise men in Nibiru before he ever came to earth. They didn't come to earth as babies. They was grown men when they got here. They've been living on Nibiru for decades, even by their standards. Think about it. If Enki was 20, 30, 40 shars old, he was already 40 or 50,000 years old, and he had been studying underneath the wise men on that planet. That's how he knew how to come here and do the genetic modifications that he did, and how he could come and circle a planet and map out the stars and map out the constellation and the oceans and all of the things, and then import sheep from Nibiru and then modify and hybridize and domesticize the grains and stuff and teach us agriculture and farming and all of those things. Yahweh ain't do none of that. So genuinely, if we understood and respected who Lord Enki actually is and the things that he did way back here in the beginning of this book, it would only be right that we give him respect and give him an opportunity to turn things around at the end, like he said he's going to do. And back to the book of Enoch. And now I tell you, my sons, and I show you the paths of righteousness and the paths of violence. Yea, I will show them to you again, that ye may know what will come to pass. And now hearken unto me, my sons. Yeah. And now hearken unto me, my sons, and walk in the paths of righteousness, and walk not in the paths of violence. For all who walk in the paths of unrighteousness shall perish forever. And that is the end of chapter 91. And I got a little sidetracked on our little conversation. So I thought I was going to be able to finish it today. We'll probably finish it up tomorrow. But we're going to stop here at chapter 92. And like I say, we'll take up the next time because this has gotten good. I knew when I was listening to this before that I really, really wanted to talk about some of these visions and stuff because it was giving me like biblical cross reference and correlation that I think is important for those who are trying to connect the dots and put this thing together. Really, really need to stop and see. So we will definitely take a look at this when we take up on it next time. So again, thank you so much for joining me. If you benefited from this, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. Also, please don't hesitate to share it with someone that you know may benefit from the material. And until next time, family, I love you so much. Peace and blessings to you. Namaste.